thank you for joining us. I'm Joy.
And I'm Laura.
And this is The Witches of Letters, a supernatural rewatch podcast.
Buckle up as we dive into Season 1, Episode 20, Dead Man's Blood.
A nice spooky title.
It was a vampire episode.
Vampires are my favorite monsters.
Yeah, they were cool. These ones were they were like dicks, weren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, so it's supernatural. So I don't think we're going to get Angel from Buffy types of vampires, are we, in Supernatural? We're going to get
No, I think it was good, the kind of vampires we had, yeah.
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 Because you want to root...
vampires, yeah.
Yeah, well, you want to root for the Winchesters to kill them instead of going, no, don't do it. He's so sparkly.
They were spikes rather than angels.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, I made myself laugh so hard with my little Twilight joke that I got a little bit out of breath.
Oh, sorry, I totally didn't even catch that. Fun fact, I've only actually ever watched the first Twilight, and I've only ever watched it once.
I mean, it is... I don't want the Twilight fans to come for me. Okay. The first time that I watched it, I was screaming the whole time about how bad it was. Now I've rewatched it, and I feel like I can appreciate it as pop culture iconography, which is what it became. But it's just... It's not a horror movie, is it? It's not a horror movie. It's definitely a tween... No, it's like a tween flick. It was for the tweens.
Yeah, I did think it was cool that we had vampires in this episode.
Yeah, I'm very picky about vampire content because vampire horror is my favorite kind of horror. I feel like I have studied more about vampires than almost anything else, and I have seen more monster movies that are vampire based than any other genre. Like for years and years and years, a lot of the horror content that I consumed was just solely vampire stuff, and that was it. And then over time, I think through different friendships, people got me to kind of like stuff like your more traditional horror stuff, and like to watch the original Halloween, Scream, and all that kind of good stuff. And then I really got into the whole Final Girl situation. But yeah, for ages, I only wanted vampire horror, and that was all that I really wanted to watch. So I was really, really, really excited when I realized that we were coming to a supernatural vampire episodes, because I love all of their vampire episodes. They are some of my favorites. The Sterling K. Brown one that's coming up, I think it's not too far away in season 2. Okay. I want to say that's probably the one you thought this was, wasn't it? That's the one that I thought this one was, but this one was really good as well. I really like the way that they set up the dynamic between like the vampire family versus the Winchester family. Because they are creating like slightly more and more complex monsters. It's not just this cut and dry, like cartoon 2-dimensional villain situation. Like they have relationships. They talk about vampires fall in love, vampires stay with each other forever. So that's why John uses Kate, I think her name's Kate, to lure in like the guy so that he can get the cult. I was fucking excited when I realized that this episode is the episode with the cult. The cult is huge. Huge.
Okay.
Huge.
I've sort of understood that from this episode, that it's like a big thing. Well, it was big enough that John actually turned up for a start and wanted to hunt with the boys, so that's clearly a big thing. And I guess my prediction is that now they've got this gun. That's what the finale is going to be. They're going to try and go after this demon with it. Well, I suppose that isn't really a prediction because they kind of say that at the end. But yeah, this gun has got a big part it's a big part of the finale, I'm guessing. I knew it was going to be a John heavy episode right from the beginning as well, because just from the recap, because the recap was all John scenes.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well, he's going to be back then. Yeah. And I like how we get some more of the backstory about him and his parenting style. And I think the conversation that him and Sam had was actually really sweet in the end. Because they start off, they butt heads to start with.
It was really nice. It's really nice to watch the dynamic. You see Dean's place in the relationship. You see how John tries to be a dad, and we actually finally understand why he can be such an asshole sometimes. Because John's parenting is borderline abusive slash neglectful in certain moments. And so, like, it's actually such a huge relief for you as a fan, I feel like, to understand that John is not just an asshole. Like, when we get to this episode and he starts unpacking stuff, because we know that Dean's been left alone to take care of Sam, and he's had to be like a pseudo dad. And obviously that's not great. And also leaving your children at like 9 to fight monsters or to be bait for monsters. Also it's not a good look. So we're finally starting to understand why he's done things the way that he's done them. And like, we're starting to realize that he's not a bad guy. He's a very, 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 very good guy who has been forced to make these appalling, horrible sacrifices and difficult choices. And he's just a man trying to do his best with what he has at any given moment. I did get really furious at him at one point in this episode, which I'm gonna have a little, I think we'll have a little rant, like just like a little mutual rant. But yeah,
I felt really sorry for Dean this episode because he was just stuck in the middle.
Yeah, me too. My sweet baby angel Dean. He was right in the middle. And like, no one is looking after Dean. Can I just say, no one's looking after Dean, right? John expects Dean to fall into line and just do as he's told and be a good soldier. Sam expects Dean to be his big brother and take care of him and listen to him and take his side.
Yeah.
And what you have left is just this, Dean's like in the middle of this tug of war between Sam and John.
Yeah. I thought it was really hilarious. And I was like, yes, good for you. When he stood up to John, that was fun.
That was a really cathartic moment, I feel like, because we know he's wanted to.
Yeah, it was everyone's reaction to it as well. But we'll talk about that when we get to it, but it was really funny.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm really excited. So, right from the beginning of the episode, we know that we're in a place called Manning, Colorado. And I was so excited when I saw who wrote this episode, because this is another She-Band episode, which meant that the Easter eggs were going to be on point and I wasn't going to have to struggle like I had done the other times. So I looked through all of the locations. They gave us Manning, Colorado. They said Nebraska later on when they're doing the debrief and they're having that conversation. Wyoming, South Dakota. And then they say briefly that like a woman fell 10,000 feet from an airplane, but she survived. So that one is such an interesting, funny, tiny little Easter egg that I feel like it makes more sense to actually put it here in the preamble. Because it's so bite-sized. It's so small. It's like a little teaser. So basically, I put a photo in my show notes that I want you guys to look at, because I feel like she looks legitimately like a vampire in this image. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, because she obviously went through a lot. But from the point of view of choosing lore and making little references, there's a picture of her when she has just come back from the jungle. So what happened was she was in an airplane with her mother, and the flight was going from one section of South America to another section of South America. Her name is Juliane Cope. She was born on the 10th of October in 1954, but she's also known by her married name of Juliane Diller. She's a mammologist who specializes in bats. So she fell 10,000 feet, walked for 11 days, was completely fine. She looks, in the photo, she looks kind of glamorous. And in this one photo, it looks like her eyes are just black. Like she's looking very vampy. So again, I have no wish to be disrespectful to her. I think that what she accomplished, she walked for 11 days through the rainforest, through incredibly dangerous terrain, after surviving a 10,000 foot fall, and found a lumberjack camp where she was able to get help. Like, I think she's incredible. She then went on to become a biologist who specializes in these different species and appears to be, doing really interesting work. So again, I want to take nothing away from her. She's a real person. She's still with us. She's still doing her work. She's incredible. She was only 17 years old when this happened to her. But I do think that it is like a cheeky little reference that you have a girl who fell 10,000 feet but was more or less fine,
Mhm.
and her field of study is bats. Like it's giving like a little tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that this is a vampire episode for me. So that is my tiny little baby Easter egg about that. And
Have you got
then
the picture? Have you
sorry.
got a version that I can see now?
Please hold.
It's coming through on WhatsApp for you now.
Okay. Oh yeah.
You see what I mean? Her eyes look like
She
jet
looks
black
so
in this photo.
little. She looks so young.
Yeah. So she is 17. She looks super young. She looks, in my opinion, very chic for someone who just fell from a plane and marched for 11 days through the jungle to
When
rescue
did you say this
herself.
was?
This was in 1970, I believe. Let me just check my notes real quick. 1971. But the whole
so check that
story
picture out.
is crazy because it was struck by lightning and the plane basically exploded around her. And she, in her account, says that it wasn't that she fell away from the plane, it was that the plane fell away from her.
Oh my God.
And the next thing that she knew, the trees were breaking her fall. She luckily was still basically in her seat. So I think the seat took most of the brunt force and would have cushioned her. So she didn't come away too badly. From what I remember, I think she had a broken collarbone, scratches, bruises. She might have had a broken finger or broken wrist, but it wasn't what I would have expected for falling as far as she fell, and like the level of disaster that she went through. But I wanted to make sure that I included.
That would be horrible.
Yeah. No, I wanted to make sure that I included the story because we always talk about final girls and really strong women and how girls are very capable. And I thought that this 17-year-old girl marching for 11 days by herself after surviving that to get herself help. Because like people didn't like the way it's written is really deceptive because they say she was rescued by lumberjacks. No, they didn't go out to find her. She found them. She marched for 11 days until she found the nearest people and got herself help. Like she rescued
herself.
Yeah. 100%. So that is her story. I think that it makes a fun Easter egg to kick off the episode.
Okay, should I do the synopsis?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is season 1, episode 20, Dead Man's Blood. The original air date for this episode was April 20th, 2006. A vampire hunter called Elkins, who we soon find out was a mentor to John, is killed by vampires. Dean and Sam investigate after finding his name in John's journal, and while they do, John shows up. He says Elkins had an antique gun that could be the key to defeating the demon that killed their mum, and the vampires must have it now. They capture one of the vampires to use in a trade for the gun, but things don't go completely to plan. However, they do defeat the vampires and gain possession of the gun, and at the end of the episode it is decided that all 3 of the Winchesters will stick together to go after the demon, which I am very excited about.
Yeah, these episodes are chef's kiss, as my friend Carly likes to say. Like they are so much fun. They're so good. I really, really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really fun episode. It was pretty spooky in places too, and there is the emotional grit and drama that we were talking about right at the beginning. So I just feel like it has a lot going for it. The lore in it is great. And I love that we see the cult in this episode. And I love how cool, like, I know it's a little bit old now, but I still think the effect of the cult, like, destroying evil beings is still pretty cool, where you have, like, the flashes of light the sigil.
That was really cool.
Yeah. I really, really like it. Like, it's so
I thought that was
good. Yeah.
Well, it's the first time I saw it, but I thought it was good. I've got a note about that later, like when they kill the vampire at the end.
Yeah. Lucian, I
Yeah,
think
and it
his
goes
name
through his
is.
head and like the light.
Yeah.
But yeah, but we'll get to that later. So the opening scene, as Joy said earlier, we're in Manning, Colorado, and we're at a bar, and Mr. Elkins is in the bar and he's researching, a bit like, Sam or any of the Winchesters do. And he
Or I
has a
mean,
notebook that looks similar to John's journal. Yeah, I've got in here. Has a notebook that looks similar to John's journal and Joy's.
awesome. I feel like I should explain
And
really briefly that for my show notes, I have a leather bound ring journal that looks as identical as I could possibly find to John's journal. And my scrawling in here is as unhinged and sometimes cool as John's because I want it to be as accurate as possible. So that's what she's talking about, guys. That's what she was referring to.
yeah, you'll have to like take a photo of it one day and put it on Instagram or something.
Yeah.
So Elkins is writing in his journal, and me being me, I had to pause and try and read what was in the journal because I like to know if the props are like what level of detail they go into.
I
And
love that.
it was good. I could read some of it, so I wrote down everything that I could see. There's a part that says John Winchester came to inform us that the enemy were gaining power. So he knew then that
Ooh,
he knows John.
ominous.
And I could make out a few other bits, like it was a bad day, was I think what they said at the beginning. And it also said something about popping up more frequently. But it definitely mentioned John, so we know that Elkins knows John. And then he turns the page, and I could read some more of that as well. And it says, "My good friend John W. in Colorado." And in big scratchy writing, it says, "We know the demon has awoken. Its evil spirit grows." And then there was something I couldn't read, "seeking fresh blood." And I just thought that was creepy.
Ooh, that is creepy. That's so creepy. I would never have known that if you hadn't have told me to. That's cool.
So there we go. Props to the props department.
Oh, that's amazing. I wonder if we could find out who did props for season 1 and just beg them to give us like behind the scenes details. We'll find out. I'll do a bit of research and I'll see if there's somebody that I can ask like really nicely to see if we can get some more behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, so Elkins is in the bar and he's getting served by the barmaid, but he is fully focused on the journal. And she says, "Would you like another?" And he says, "Yeah, thanks, Beth." And there's a guy at the bar who quietly like side eyes and said, "Oh, I thought they called the Unibarmer," which is like a little bit of banter at Elkins' expense. And she says, "Yeah, poor Mr. Elkins lives all alone up in the canyon, sits here every day going through his papers, making his little notes. He's a nice old man. He's just a nut." So she gives him another shot and he looks up and there's a woman and 3 men who enter the bar and they look like
Shifty.
we can tell they look shifty. And it's not really a huge surprise when they turn out to be vampires. Like they do look the part. Okay. There's lots of leather. There's lots of eyeliner. Like it's giving 2000s vamp very strongly. And Beth says, "What'll you have?" And she says, "Jack all around, leave the bottle." And Beth says, "Are you hungry?" And she says, "We have dinner plans," which is our cute little vampire banter for us. Okay. So Beth says, "Can I get you something else, Mr. Elkins?" But he's gone because he's not stupid and he knows that they are after him. So he's going to go on the run to his cabin. But before we do that, I'm going to drop the Manning, Colorado Easter egg for you. So a humble 35 minutes from Manning is a place called Lafayette. And in Lafayette, there is rumored to be a real vampire. So I'm going to read you this account. This was written by Colorado Connie. So she says, "Rumors persist today that residents from Lafayette, Colorado see a mysterious figure walking around in the cemetery late at night. Could it be the self-proclaimed vampire Theodore Glava? I would imagine as a poor coal miner, he learned to fit in by using his Romanian-Transylvanian birthplace as a conversation starter. Can you imagine walking into a mine saying you were a vampire? It would definitely make for a good icebreaker in conversations."
Yeah, it definitely would.
In Glover's time, American Victorians were gaga over vampires. Irish Gothic horror author Bram Stoker published Dracula in 1897. He introduced the character of Count Dracula and established many conventions of subsequent vampire fantasy that was already very popular. So, Spanish influenza was ravaging the town, and sadly, Theodore succumbed to it. But part of what caused the exhumation that we're going to see in just a minute in this story might be that right before he passed, he seemed to have made a full recovery. The eeriness of his apparent wellness and the contrast of his sudden passing probably played a part in the lore. So now there have been a lot of modern death studies done, and I know because my mom did a sociology degree and studied this, that like very often people who are dying, not super duper often, but often enough, part of the death process sometimes is the last day. They just feel this flood of release and they feel as though they're well and they have like a second wind in them. And I would assume that this is what happened in Theodore's case. But because it had been so strange and because he'd bragged about being a vampire to the whole town, they decided to dig him up to see. So Colorado Connie goes on to tell us, lore tells how the townspeople dug up the grave and found blood by Glava's mouth, his teeth seeming more extensive than average, and his nails are still growing. Then they drove a stake through his heart and reburied him. Now, a tree grows straight through the grave plot. Some vivid imaginations say the tree grew from the wooden stake, and the red rose bushes nearby grew from his fingernails. Too bad there are trees all around, but none grow straight through his plot. But it makes for a good story anyway. I'm sure he approves.
I don't think those people understand how things grow, but
I mean, if you believe in mystical beings like vampires, I guess mystically maybe the blood of a vampire could turn a stake into a tree. I don't know. And the blood droplets could become red rose bushes. It's very romantic. It's very like Victorian Gothic.
It reminds me of Practical Magic where the rose bushes grow in the garden.
That's the vibe, I feel like. That is the vibe. But I just thought it was really interesting because I think Luther is supposed to be from around this kind of time frame. So I thought it was entertaining that when I looked into Colorado and this area, that basically from this place, you have someone who publicly declared himself to be born in Transylvania and a vampire. And people believed him so much that they dug him up to check on him.
I wonder if he knew he was dying, I wonder if he put the blood around his mouth on purpose.
Respect, okay? If that's the case, if he was like
committing to the
just,
bit,
you know, just get some pork cutlets or something, just make it look real. Keep spreading the stories, make sure that they dig me up. Because like so many people were so convinced that they had seen him after he'd been laid to rest. The stories were spreading like wildfire. People were just like, maybe we should check, you know, maybe we should just do something about this. And like, we now know, again, because of death studies, that the cuticles will retract from your hands. So it'll look like the nails are growing when they're not. And again, the gums will recede from the teeth in death, which will make it look like the teeth maybe look elongated. I'm not sure whether blood around the mouth or the hands would be something that would happen during the death process or part of the influenza issue, but that feels more like either it was added on or he and his wife, he was like, listen, I'm gonna die, but I'm gonna go out my way. Like Laura has her conspiracy theory, like just add a little bit to make sure that, you know, we entertain them for the rest of time. My legend will live on. I could believe that he was a flamboyant storyteller and that this was what he wanted, then that would make me so happy because that's a really fun way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So Elkins goes inside his house and he senses someone is there straight away. And then there's another leather-clad person in his house. And I wrote, if I hadn't already seen... That's what I'd had in my notes earlier as well for the bar. I said, where is it? I'd written, a group of shifty-looking leather-clad people come in.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Okay.
So yeah, and it was then obvious that it was a vampire episode, even if I hadn't already known that it was going to be a vampire episode.
Yeah.
And I made a note that he has a John Winchester style conspiracy board type thing set up in his house. Although I suppose it is just a hunter's conspiracy board.
Yeah. It looks really cool though.
Yeah. And then he throws a dagger or something like a dagger at her and it goes right through her chest. And I was like, ha. But she just pulls it out. She's like, nothing. It hasn't hurt her at all. Oh, and her eyes flash white. So we had another eye special effect and they kind of look like cat's eyes. Like it's like reflective almost.
I wrote it down. It looks so cool. This is my favorite vampire eye special effects. Like I like the ones that they did in the Anne Rice adaptations. I enjoy them so much. But I actually think this one looks more realistic. Like this is the most realistic looking vampire eye flare I have ever seen. That would be a really good explanation for why they see so well in the dark. If they had that kind of like cat's eyes, like that extra layer that cats have so that they're able to see it and be better predators. And we know vampires are predators. So it makes them look that extra bit like scary and monstrous and predatory. And I love it. This is my favorite special effect from the show so far because it's so good. It's subtle, but it's like so creepy.
I didn't even the first time I watched it, I didn't notice it until it's later on in the episode where they're in front of John's car and he has to stop and the like headlights are shining at them. Because I noticed it because they all had it then. But that was the first time I noticed it on the first watch through. But the second time I noticed it a few other times as well. They just do like quick flash of it.
Yeah, no, it's so good. I love it. I love how menacing they are. Like I felt so sorry for Elkin in this scene. Like because we know from the beginning that he's a hunter like John because of the way that they set up the story. And we know that he's a good guy. And it becomes really clear what they are as the fight scene kind of progresses. And when she just pulls the knife out of her chest, she says, "Damn, you can do better than that. Like, this was nothing to me." And she talks about how he looks old and it's all just really menacing. So obviously they've tangled before and fought, and he's aged and slowed and become an old man hunter. And like in this world, you're not going to stay in your old age for very long, I don't think, unless you're really, really, really good. So he runs to get something. He locks the door behind him. He pushes a heavy bookcase across it. He opens the cupboard to reveal the safe, and then he starts trying to put the combination in, but he's like clearly freaked out, so he's struggling a little bit, and it isn't really smooth going. There are a couple of false starts. Then the vampires start banging on the door to try to break it in, and he takes the safe box out and opens it to show us the Colt. Okay. And this is a very sexy, very old-fashioned spin action gun. So the two men drop through the roof and leap over the desk to grab Elkin. The gun falls to the floor. The bookcase barricading the door falls, and she's broken through. So she picks up the gun from the floor and looks at it, and she says, "Nice gun, but it wouldn't do you much good, of course. Boys were eating in tonight." And then they pile in and just start ripping him apart, and he's screaming. And that's the end of the opening sequence. But it's just really solid horror, I feel like. Like it was scary. It was odd. There were twists and turns. In the beginning, you don't totally understand why he's doing what he's doing either, because we don't know what the gun can do. So it's really unexpected, I guess, is the word that I would use.
So then we cut to a cafe and Dean is reading a newspaper and Sam is on the laptop and they're trying to find cases. Dean says he's got nothing and Sam starts reading cases out. This is where he says one of the ones about the girl who fell from the aeroplane.
Yep.
Dean mentions that they could go and see Sarah again. And then Sam reads out that a man in Colorado called Daniel Elkins was mauled in his home. And Dean says he knows the name Elkins. And then he finds him in the journal. And they decide it must be the same guy because the number in the journal has a Colorado area code. So they're pretty convinced that this guy knew their dad. So that's the case they obviously then go with. And we get a very, very brief shot of the Rockies and the Impala driving past. So we know we're in Colorado.
Yeah. This is where they've name dropped all of the Easter eggs, isn't it? So he says, we've got a decent lead in all of Nebraska. And then Sam says, well, I've been scanning Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota. And then he mentions a woman in Iowa fell, which when you look into it, you realize was like a little bit of a mislead, but they wanted to keep everything in the show setting. So they kind of gave us a little misdirect, but that's fine because I sidestepped that with my amazing research powers. So we're all good. But the other ones are really fun. So in South Dakota, there's actually a formation of mountains in the Badlands called Vampire Valley. So I've included a picture. Now, I Googled and Googled until my hands were going to bleed. If there is vampire lore from Vampire Valley, I can't really find it. It's two jagged looking mountains. They're kind of reddish because of the landscape. So they do sort of look like two fangs protruding up. So it may just be that it's called Vampire Valley because of its appearance. But I thought that was still a fun little nod to the theme of the show. Then we've obviously covered Colorado already. We've covered her survival story, Final Girlness. So then let's see, what else do we have? Oh, so I found a Collider article that is Supernatural's most haunted states mapped out across the US. And I found out that 18 episodes of Supernatural are set in Colorado. Colorado is one of the most haunted states, according to the show. So I've included that link in. Laura can't look at it because there's spoilers, because it talks about every setting of every single episode, but we've got to add it to our road trip, at the end.
Yeah.
For sure. So for those of you who, like me, have seen the episodes and are not afraid of spoilers, definitely check out the article. It's really interesting and really, really, really fun. So that's Colorado done. Now, Nebraska interested me, okay? Because they have their own vampire, again, from around the same era. But what really gets me is this is from a historic sort of site about Nebraska on a government state website, because it has .gov at the end of it, which means that it's a government run one. So this is sort of like a library type history of the place project. So it was written by History Nebraska, and History Nebraska says, a frightening, if true story with a supernatural twist comes out of the northwest county of Dawes, just around the Pine Ridge. At the end of 1895, they saw a number of brutal attacks against many herds of cattle and the men who tended to them. Even the animals from the wilderness became occasional victims of these attacks. The twist was that these vicious animal-like attacks were committed by a man many swore was an actual vampire. The attacker would hunt down the animal using only his bare hands as a weapon. He would wrestle the beast to the ground and proceed to tear the unfortunate creature apart with almost supernatural strength. Many times he was witnessed lapping the blood of his victim the way a dog laps water.
Yeah,
that's a lot. No one knew for sure about this individual's origin, but he had been seen numerous times in December of 1895. Many had even tried to capture this man or man-like animal. All attempts were unsuccessful. There is a report of Jack Lewis, a cowboy working ranches around the Black Hills in northern Nebraska Prairie, having a personal encounter with the vampire. Lewis and a small group of wranglers had been on the range for several days in mid-December. From out of the shadows of the early evening on the winter prairie leaped the vampire directly at Jack Lewis. The cowboy was knocked to the ground, and the beast clawed at his neck, alternatively trying to choke Lewis. In the moments of the struggle, Jack had managed to draw his firearm and fire off a round or two. The gunfire attracted his companions, who quickly arrived on the scene. The killer fled, but was pursued by several of the cowboys on horseback. The beast managed to elude the riders as dusk drew into night, eventually making good his escape. According to the story, Jack Lewis was badly torn about the face and neck by the man's teeth. There was also shock as he described the attack by a frothing assailant trying to bite his throat.
Yeah. I wonder if there's some sort of medical condition that makes people act like vampires.
Rabies.
Ah.
Because it says at the end that he was frothing
Oh,
and trying
yeah.
to bite. So my
Oh.
logical scientific explanation for this would be that this was a person who contracted rabies and was acting out the way that rabies makes animals act out, because we are just mammals. Um, and it does affect us
Yeah.
as well. So my assumption would be that that would be the logical explanation for it. So I'll leave it up to you guys, the listeners, to decide if you think this was potentially a vampire or if you think that this was a person who was sadly affected by a disease. Either way, it's very scary and very spooky.
I reckon he was a vampire.
I mean, that would be far more spooky. So I've attached the link to Vampires of Nebraska in the show notes. You guys are welcome to read the article in full. I look at the old school cowboy photos. I also have a photo of the Vampire Valley and its exact location. I have a 1920s postcard, which I thought was pretty cool. So there's a really old school image of Vampire Valley. If you find anything about any lore about Vampire Valley and if there's actually vampires in Vampire Valley, I want to know. So write in and tell me about it because I need to know. So then our next location is Wyoming, which is my final creepy Easter egg for you guys. So I've covered every location mentioned because it's a John Sheban episode. So we know that he is coming to us with the scary behind the scenes stuff, right? So in the show notes, you're going to see a photo of a newspaper article that was written about a man named Weldon Meade Kennedy, who was a self-declared vampire. He was a serial killer. It is very, very creepy and very spooky. And you'll be able to read the article as I have it here. But basically, I'll give you a summation of it. So it says Weldon Meade Kennedy, who was 29, was convicted of murder of 2 South County teenagers, and he is a self-proclaimed vampire. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in state prison yesterday by Superior Court Judge Alan Lindsay. Kennedy, formerly of Union City, was convicted of the bizarre strangling death of Vicki Lynn Island, 14, of Union City, and the decapitation slaying of Mario Billy Oliver, 15, out of Hayward. 2 sentences, according to Judge Lindsay's edict, would run consecutive, with the 2 to 12-year sentences Kennedy must return to Wyoming to complete. He was convicted in Wyoming of the stabbing assaults on 2 teenage hitchhikers he picked up during his fugitive flight from Union City last summer. Kennedy confessed in his trial here that he killed the South County teenagers as sacrifices to Satan.
So he doesn't sound like a vampire. He just sounds like a psychopath.
Yeah. I mean, I am not making a case that he is a vampire. He has declared himself to be a vampire. And given the theme of the episode, I figure that's why Wyoming was mentioned, because he did his crimes in Wyoming, but he was also caught and sent away in Wyoming. I thought that the link to, like, his view that he was worshiping the devil and the demonic also tied in really well with the episode, because we know that John is getting the gun in order to kill the demon.
Yeah.
So I figured that Kennedy was the Easter egg for this location.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so Sam and Dean turn up at Elkins' house and they break in. And they're kind of like looking through, seeing what they can find around the house. Sam finds salt by the door. And then there was a good quote from Dean where he says, "You mean like protection against demon salt? Or oops, I spilled the popcorn salt."
Yeah, that was a good line.
I liked that.
Yeah.
And Sam says it's clearly a ring, so it was like a protection ring. And then Dean finds the journal that's like their dad's, but it says it's just like their dad's, but it dates back to the 60s. And Sam calls him a player, which I assume means a hunter. Like he's also a hunter.
Yeah, he says it's clearly a ring. You think this guy Elkins was a player, as in like he was one of us. It was a really cool moment. I really enjoyed it.
And then when Dean found the journal, I tried to pause it and see what the journal said again. So I had some more little notes here about that. So the first page that he's looking at says something about Christian theology in the Middle Ages and something about demon possession. And then the second page had some sort of packing list on it, which was cool. So it said camp stove, fuel, garbage bags, H2O proof matches, cards, wire, car jack, spare tire, container. There were also a couple of other items on there, but I couldn't make out what they said. I thought that was cool. So
Mm.
it's obviously like a list when he was going out hunting for something.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite interesting seeing his packing list. Although I've never heard anyone call waterproof matches H2O proof matches. He might as well have just written waterproof. But that's cool.
I don't know. I guess it's an abbreviation. H2O is a little shorter than writing out water, but not by very much.
No. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. So that's what his journal said.
That is really interesting. I love getting these little behind the scenes things because it's so hard to do. Like you have to get it in exactly the right position so that it's readable. So thank you for doing that because that's very, very cool to know. I love that.
I love
guess
doing that.
was
I always, like when there's letters and stuff on TV shows, I always have to pause and read what they say.
Yeah. I guess he was about to go, like, I guess from what you've read to us, what was in his journal, it sounds like he was aware that the vampires were around again and he was going to go after them. And maybe he was even planning on using the cult on some of them or all of them, since they're so difficult to kill and he's an older guy. Like, I think it would be hard for him to get the drop on a nest of like 9 to 10 vampires and behead all of them. I don't think he would do that. So I think his plan was probably going to be to drop in on them during the day, behead as many of them while they were asleep as he could, and then finish the rest off with the cult. And then I assume he was going to give it to John.
Yeah, because he mentions it in the letter, doesn't he? I'm not sure. There wasn't any dates on the journal pages, so I mean, they could have been from any time. But yeah, if they were recent ones, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they continue to search the house, and we can see that someone is watching from outside. And on my initial watch through, I thought it was either the vampires or John. I did think, it might be John.
Yeah, I thought it was John. But I have seen it before, so that could be my memory. Like, that's not necessarily me being clever. Like, that should just be me literally remembering it, but not really realizing it.
And I only thought it might be John just from, like I said, about the recap had a lot of John in it, so I assumed he was going to be in it at some point.
Those are also very Jeffrey Dean Morgan looking shoulders. Lord's dying about that. They are. He's big. He has good shoulders. What can I say? I feel like they're recognizable shoulders. So Sam and Dean are having this conversation and they're examining for clues, trying to figure out what could have happened. And Dean says, it looks like he put up a hell of a fight. And Sam says, yeah. And they keep searching and Dean crouches to get a closer look at the floor. And Sam says, you got something? And Dean says, I don't know. There's some scratches on the floor. And Sam says, death throes, maybe? And that was good and creepy, can I just say? And Dean says, yeah, maybe. But he decides to investigate. And I thought Laura might find this to be like a little bit of a thirst trap because it's Dean being intelligent and clever. So he grabs a page from a notebook and puts it over the marks and rubs the pencil on it to get the outline and the like kind of like emboss it onto the page. And Dean says, or maybe a message. And he pulls the paper up that has a lot of blood on the back. Like he actually uses the blood to stick the paper down so that he can do the rubbing. And I was like, what? So he hands it to Sam and he says, look familiar. And Sam says, 3 letters, 6 digits, the location and combination of a post office box. It's a mail drop. And Dean says, just the way Dad does it. And I like that because from what I take away from this episode, it feels to me as though Elkin is one of the first points of contact for a younger John. So think about it. John loses Mary. He goes to Missouri, right? He learns the truth about the world. And then he gets put in touch with Elkin some way, somehow. Maybe Missouri even knows about Elkin and says, you need to go here. This is the person that you need to see. And Elkin starts training John, teaching him how to kill things, teaches him how to put together a notebook. That's very much what it feels like to me. And they're clearly tight because the Colt has to be the greatest weapon in this universe, and he's gonna make sure that it goes to John Winchester if it goes to anybody. So I just
Mhm.
feel like that's a really plausible backstory.
Yeah, and like you say, he's clearly picked up a lot of what we know as things that the boys have learnt from John are things that he's obviously learnt from Elkins.
Exactly.
So then we cut to them at the PO box picking the lock, and there's a letter inside addressed to JW, which they think obviously is for John Winchester. And they're in the car, and there's a knock on the window. And I wrote,
It was a
Dean
jump
jumps out
scare.
of his skin.
So did
He-
I. I was like,
Dean,
son of a bitch.
yeah. Dean looks so scared, and I just wrote, "It's John." He gets in the car and he says he heard about Daniel and came as fast as he could and saw them at his
Wait, can
place.
I
So then
just
that's when,
say, sorry, but this is so important because John sees that he's made them jump and he's so happy with himself. Like he did it. He totally did it on purpose. Dean shits a brick and John is just like, I got you good.
he
Please
did. He
continue.
did get them good.
Yeah, I had to make a
Um,
note because that cracked me up.
yeah. So John says he saw them at Elkins' place. So that's when we knew that it was him that was watching, not the vampires. And then he's talking
Yeah.
about how he knew him. So he's saying he taught him a lot about hunting. Sam says he never mentioned him to them before. And John says it's because they had a falling out and he hadn't seen him in years. And then he takes the letter from Dean and reads it. And he asks the boys if they saw an antique Colt revolver at Elkins' place. And Dean says he just saw an empty case, but there was no gun there. And John says they have it, meaning the vampires, and they need to pick up the trail.
Yeah.
He just makes reference to he just says that the gun's really important, but he doesn't explain yet why. And he wants the boys to go with him. And I wrote, yay, finally they get to work together.
It's just like there's this scene, right? Where so we start to see a little bit of the dynamic between Sam and John. Because Sam starts
Yeah.
questioning. He says, the gun, why? And John says, because it's important. That's why. And Sam says, Dad, we don't even know what these things are yet. And John says, they were what Daniel Elkins killed best, vampires. And Dean says, vampires?
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was no such thing. And Sam says, you've never even mentioned them, Dad. And John says, I thought they were extinct. I thought Elkins and others had wiped them out. I was wrong. Um, and then we hear John giving us the show lore, the supernatural show lore for the vampires. So
Mm-hmm.
he says, most vampire lore is crap. A cross won't repel them, sunlight won't kill them, and neither will a stake to the heart. But the bloodlust, that part's true. They need fresh human blood to survive. They were once people, so you won't know it's a vampire until it's too late. And then we kind of
Mm-hmm.
shift to the next horror scene. But I think it's interesting the way that John is basically like, just shut up and do as I say. Um, there's almost this undercurrent of children should be seen and not heard. The way that he
Yeah.
just throws down orders, he doesn't want to explain anything. He acts like explaining this key information to his children is a waste of his time.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand why Sam has his backup. And I think in
Same.
previous
Yeah.
watch throughs, I didn't really like, I was more on Dean's side because I thought Dean was like right about a lot of stuff. And we sort of see him, well, we do see him stand up to John in this episode. But earlier on, I think, I don't know why. I think maybe it was the power of Jeffrey Dean Morgan compelling me. But I was just like, just listen to John Winchester. Obviously, he's right about everything. Um, this time through, though, I think I'm older. I think I'm more mature, and I'm not in my 20s. And I'm looking at it, just being like, why aren't you communicating with your
Explaining.
sons, who you have trusted
Yeah.
to go on other hunts, where you physically sent them to help people, where your voicemail is like, go to my son Dean. If you need something, if it's an emergency, Dean will help you. Like,
Yeah.
it just I see what Sam is saying. Like, Sam saying it's hypocritical. You can't trust us to this level and put us in this much danger and then pull back when we're all together finally and just shut down from us and not tell us anything.
Yeah. I've definitely got notes about this later on as well, but I agree with Sam. He does annoy me as well at some point. but I do understand because like Sam is just trying to. He's logical. He wants to know why they're doing the things, and I'm the same way. I would want to know why,
Yeah.
and it's not. He's not trying to be a dick. He's just what needs to know all the facts so he understands why they're doing things.
Yeah. I think he just wants like a basic level of respect. Like, I think he feels like his dad
Yeah.
is treating him like he's a child who's incapable of understanding things or being trusted with stuff. Um, and I think Sam feels really disrespected by the whole situation. And I get that. There are moments though where I feel like, okay, here's my only gripe with Sam is I feel like you got to choose your timing. You got to choose your timing. And I
Yeah.
think that his timing is a little bit off in this episode. But that's my only real
Yeah, that's when I
complaint.
get annoyed at him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this whole bit is John doing a voiceover while we see the vampires kind of doing whatever they're doing. And
Killing
then
people.
so yeah, there's a couple driving down the road and one of them lies in the middle of the road to make them stop. And I was watching this and I was like, I'm sure I've seen this move somewhere before. And then when I looked up all the fun facts on IMDb, I saw this one. So it says, the vampire who captures the driving couple lies in the middle of the road to get them to stop. Later, in the CW's other popular supernatural show, The Vampire Diaries. That's a favourite trick of Damon Salvatore. So I was like, oh, that's probably where I've seen it before.
Yeah. Damon does it in like season 1, I think he does it. And what's really, really funny is how I've seen convention clips where there's banter between them talking about it. And there was one that I saw that made me laugh so hard where it was like, you might even have sent it to me, where Jensen and Jared are talking about stuff. And one of the questions that they get asked is, if you could have a crossover with another supernatural show, what would you do? And Jensen's like, well, there's a show called The Vampire Diaries that everybody keeps bringing up. He was like, I think the Winchesters could just go over there and clear up that whole issue. Like, we could just get rid of like both the guys, because like there's 2 very handsome male leads in The Vampire Diaries and there's 2 very handsome male leads in Supernatural. So there was a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of like joking competitiveness. But that cracked me up. And somebody from the back, I can't remember if it was one of the producers, screams, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for that episode. And I was just like, oh man, that would be fucking amazing. I would love to see the Salvatore brothers versus the Winchester brothers. That would give me life. Okay, that would be epic.
Who would you bet your money on? I'd bet Winchesters.
Here's the thing is it depends on what assets they both have. Because as much as I would love to automatically say that it would be Sam and Dean, Damon is fucking devious, okay? Damon is so devious, and I can see if Damon had any kind of heads up and knew that they were coming or that they were there and they were a threat, I think possibly the Salvatores might make it. And it might be one of those situations where they get into this big, like, huge fight and there's really, like, horrible injuries on both sides, and then they just kind of, like, go their separate ways. That's my predicted outcome, depending on who they have with them. Because, like, also, do they have witches with them that the Winchesters have to go up against? Because they're used to, they do fight witches, but witches and then also Damon and the wild super speed that the vampires have in that world and the ability to hypnotize people. Like, I don't know. I feel like it would be a really, really good fight.
I reckon they'd have some sort of, they'd have done their research, obviously.
Yeah.
And they would have some sort of protection against their, like, hypnotism.
Valerian. Yeah. They could dose themselves up on Valerian, make themselves toxic. That would be a big one, I feel like. If they had the drop, the Salvatores would have no chance. It really depends on, in my opinion, who has what information. But yeah, it would be a really fucking good fight. And I would pay money to have the writers of both shows duke it out and get like a really realistic, like, Winchester versus Salvatore fight and find out like how it would go down, because it would be epic. It would be epic. I feel like the Winchesters would probably come out on top unless there were some very specific circumstances. But yeah, it would be it would be really good.
So he's lying down on the road and he gets them to stop and then he captures them. And I just wrote, the vampire teeth were scary.
Yeah. They're my only complaint in this episode because the idea of it is so good and so scary, but the special effects have not aged the best for me. And so it's like, what happens if you haven't already seen it? Is a set of totally CGI, like a second set of teeth emerge from the front and look like a fucking row of shark's teeth. And as far as monster teeth go, it looks awesome. And from a practical effects point of view, I don't think that you could do it realistically because it's not like the way that the two ones work is you have a mechanism where you push it forward with your tongue, and I don't think that you couldn't hide that in someone's mouth. It would be too big, like it would look weird. So it had to be CGI, and it looks okay. And like when it first aired, it looked terrifying. But like Laura always says, the TV screens were smaller. They were less high res. The special effects were really good back in the day. So like back in the day, I was like, oh my God, this is phenomenal and terrifying. And I'm fucking shit in a brick. But I was rewatching it the other day and I was like, oh, this is the only thing that lets them down a little bit. Just a little bit is this could look scarier.
I liked them. I thought the teeth were good. I've seen a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, it's by no means demon dust janky. Like it's by no means like bad CGI. It's just that from the point of view of me in 2024 with my enormous high-res TV, it doesn't look the same as it did when it first aired. It looks different, and because of how good the eye effects are, I think I was comparing the two special effects and I was like, if those teeth effects were as good as the eye effects, this would be insanely scary. And I was a little bit upset that it wasn't on the same level because I wanted to be more scared.
I like how TV shows that have vampires and things in them do have their own version of vampire teeth though. Because have you seen there's I saw it on Instagram, so it's like a post that someone's put together and it's all the different types of vampire teeth and what they look like. So there's like, this is the vampire teeth out of True Blood. This is from the Vampire Diaries. This is from Interview with the Vampire. All all the vampire things.
Oh no!
I'm not sure if Supernatural's. I'm not sure if Supernatural's on it. I'm gonna see if I can find that graphic. It's really cool.
Nice. If they don't have Supernatural, we're just gonna have to be like, excuse me, you're missing one. You need to add in some scary ass shark teeth.
I feel like it was just like vampire specific shows, so it might not have done. Although I don't know if they have vampires in it a lot, they might have been on there. I'll see if I can find it anyway.
Yeah. So I felt like this episode was very Buffy meets Anne Rice in terms of horror. So there's the eye special effects, which is very much an Anne Rice description of vampires. There's the kind of like, there's the dead man's blood lore. That's totally taken from Anne Rice's books and her concept. There is the very sexualized, almost succubus demon-like element. So these vampires are almost more like demons that are succubuses who happen to drink blood to live. Like that's kind of how they come across to me. And that felt like really Anne Rice because her vampires are hypersexualized, which is pretty accurate to a lot of the older folklore about them. And also the Victorian era vampire was pretty sexualized. So I thought that was really, really interesting. I feel like the Buffy side of it is Buffy gave us this creative, fresh take on vampire horror with really specific new rules and lore. So like the Slayer as an idea had never really existed like this before. Like we had Van Helsing, but we didn't have something this in depth. And there's hyper specific vampire lore in Buffy that I feel like gives it something new. It breathed fresh life into it. And I feel like Supernatural kind of did a good job, in my opinion, of merging the best of Anne Rice stuff with the best of Buffy stuff to give us something that was creepy, interesting, a new take on vampires, because Laura's totally right. Like the teeth are, my initial complaints aside, the teeth are really cool. They are really scary, especially the first time that you see them because you're not expecting it. You're expecting either like the Spike era, like monster face vampire, or like the Angely, you know what I mean? Like the Buffy bad guy, almost half mask with the teeth thing.
Ugly vampire.
But the ugly vampire. Or you're expecting like the sexy vampires to have the sexy little vampire fangs. But that's not what they did. We have sexy vampires, but then with fucking barracuda teeth that just come from nowhere. And it's extra creepy because there's that scene a little while down the line where John talks about how they have extra sets of teeth that descend, just like shark's teeth. And that is so scary. That adds a new layer to vampire lore. And I just thought this is a cool way of doing things. And I really love that about the show.
For me, I feel like they were quite similar to the vampires in True Blood, even though that wasn't out yet, I don't think. So they're hypersexualized as well. And
they are,
it's much more gory. That was much more a gory show. And I had the shock factor. And I feel like this episode did that quite well as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that it was probably influenced by Supernatural and Anne Rice movies.
Yeah, I was then going to look up when True Blood was out because it definitely wasn't. I don't think it was out yet. Oh yeah, True Blood didn't come out until 2008, so that's after this. So John is listening on a police scanner, and he hears about what we've just seen happen, and wakes the boys, saying it's the vampires and they need to go. So they all clear out of the. Are they in a motel or are they in Elkins' house? I could not work out this whole episode. Okay.
They're in a motel. Yeah, they're in a motel. But it's the way that he wakes them up. He like beats their feet. I can't remember if he kicks them or if he like takes his hand and smashes it, but I wrote down
about I don't remember.
It. And Dean's like, and Sam's kind of like starting, and they're just both sleepy as hell. And he's like, I picked up a police call. And Sam's like, what happened? And he says the couple called 911, found a body in the street. Cops got there and everyone was missing. It's the vampires. And Sam says, how do you know? And John says, just follow me, okay? And Dean says, vampires. It gets funnier every time I hear it. It's like, he was very Dracula. I'm sure it's hard to totally digest that. But that line really made me laugh. And the way that he just like smacks them, like, come on, get up. That cracked me up. It's so funny. It's such a funny wake up call. He's just like, get up.
Yeah. So then we cut to a scene where John is talking to the police. We're at the scene of this where the vampires stopped the car. And he comes back to the boys. And Sam's getting annoyed about just having to blindly follow John's orders. And Dean says, don't tell me it's already starting. And Sam's like, what's starting? And this is where I wrote down. Like yeah. This is where I wrote down, I do get Sam's point. And I wrote, for now anyway, I think he overreacts later. But for now I understand. And I don't agree with John. And I said, he's not answering any of the questions. And this is where I wrote about, he just needs to know. He's logical. He wants to know why they're doing things, not just blindly following. And I also don't like how John makes Dean feel bad about his car at the end of this scene.
Okay, so that was my rage. That was my rage moment because I was just like, John Winchester, I will slap you across your face. Okay, don't you dare speak to Dean that way.
Yeah.
So they
Dean's just done everything he's been told.
Yeah, Dean's been the perfect model son. And John's being trash. He's being trash when he does that. It's shitty as fuck. So John basically says, it was them all right. It looks like they're heading west. We'll have to double back to get around the detour. And Sam says, how can you be so sure? But he says it like, how can you be so sure? Like, he's like mad. And he's not trying to hide it. And Dean goes, Sam. And Sam goes, I just want to know we're going in the right direction. And John says, we are. And Sam says, how do you know? And then John hands Dean the vampire tooth. And Dean goes, it's a vampire fang. And John says, not fangs, teeth. The second set descends when they attack. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And John looks at Sam and he says, any more questions? And Sam looks away and stays silent because, like, at this point, he's obviously been proven that like he knows what he's doing. And Sam's frustrated, so he looks away. And for once in their lives, Supernatural Wiki did not write that he had bitch face. So that's a good thing. Although he maybe deserved it in this scene.
So I was going to say, when he deserves it, they don't say it.
Yeah.
When he doesn't, they do.
Yeah. So John says, all right, let's get out of here. We're losing daylight. So they start heading to their respective cars. And John says, this is the one that we're talking about, guys. This is the one. Hey, Dean, why don't you touch up your car before you get rust? I wouldn't have given you the damn thing if I thought you were just going to ruin it. And I was like, bitch, somebody needs to hit you in the balls. Yeah. You're just being a dick. Like, you are just being horrible. And Dean looks fucking crushed, y'all. Like, Dean looks like he's on the verge of tears. Like, not like necessarily on the verge of tears, but you just see like the emotions start to well a little bit, and he looks really fucking sad, like somebody kicked his puppy, and I want to punch John in the face. Okay.
Yeah, because he kind of, all he wants is for John to be proud of him, and he's acting like he's disappointed with him.
Yeah, John's being an asshole, frankly. So he looks at the Impala, and Sam looks at Dean with this like, this is what he's like face. Yeah. And Dean makes this like, ugh, kind of like, yeah, kind of a face. And then they get into the car. So they're inside the Impala, and Sam's driving, following John's truck. And Dean's reading the lore. And it says, vampires nest in groups of 8 to 10. Smaller packs are sent to hunt for food. Victims are taken to the nest where the pack keeps them alive, bleeding them for days or weeks. And then he says, I wonder if that's what happened to that 911 couple. Now, what I liked about this is again really, really extra scary. Like, I think occasionally, maybe in Buffy, there'll be like some group that'll take people and be slowly bleeding them to death for a really prolonged period of time, and that is super scary. So like the Master episodes, that was something that they did. But it's pretty original because most vampire horror, you're just dead in seconds. But in Supernatural world, you could be dying slowly for fucking weeks in agony before you finally kick the bucket. And it sounds torturous and horrible. Yeah, and it's not just one either, it's a group.
Yeah. I just wrote in my notes, I wouldn't want to be taken by a vampire, being kept alive and fed on for weeks. That would be horrible.
It's really good horror, like, because that is vile. Like, that is vile and disgusting and scary as fuck. So it's great. I was a big fan. I was creeped out, and that was awesome. So Sam is angry at this point, and he's saying that's probably what Dad's thinking. Of course, it would be nice if he just told us what he thinks. And Dean says, so it is starting. And Sam says, what? And Dean says, Sam, we've been looking for Dad all year. Now we're not with him for more than a couple of hours, and there's static already. And Sam says, look, I'm happy he's okay, all right, and I'm happy that we're all working together again. And Dean says, well, good. And Sam says, it's just the way he treats us like we're like children. And Dean goes, oh, God. And Sam goes, he barks orders at us, Dean. He expects us to follow him without question. He keeps us on some crap need-to-know deal. And Dean says, he does what he does for a reason. And Sam says, what reason? And Dean says, our job. There's no time to argue. There's no margin for error, all right? That's just the way the old man runs things. And Sam says, yeah, well, maybe that worked when we were kids, but not anymore, all right? Not after everything you and I have been through, Dean. I mean, are you telling me you're cool with just falling into line and letting him run the whole show? And Dean, who's giving Sam this like long suffering look, but also like he's trying to convince himself, says, if that's what it takes. And Sam shakes his head, and it's just like, this is fucking bullshit, man. And then we cut to the barn where the vampires are.
Yeah. And there's one vampire who I think is called Bo, and he's teasing the captured couple. He's just being an arsehole. And then Luther, who's clearly the leader of this nest, comes home, and he says that the girl looks interesting, but the boy doesn't. And then the boyfriend gets killed in a really horrific way in front of the girl.
Oh yeah, it's dark.
Nice.
It's really dark. It was really, really good and scary. Like, if I had been watching this episode by myself at night, I would have been hugging my pillows, not happy about trying to go to sleep later. It was a really good, scary scene.
I'm always watching these episodes at night on my own, by the way.
Yeah, she is. It's true. Laura's very brave.
So then Luther gets shown the loot from Elkins' house and is told that they killed him, and he isn't happy about this. He says that others, like Elkins, will know the signs and are now going to come looking for them. And Kate, who's the girl from, I think she was the vampire from the start, wasn't she?
Yeah, she is, yeah.
And that's like Luther's partner, I guess.
Yeah.
She says she did it for him as revenge for what he did to Luther's family, which we don't really find out any more about that, but we assume that he killed his family.
Yeah.
And Luther says revenge isn't worth much if you end up dead. But then he sees the antique gun and says that he's seen it before and it's no ordinary gun.
Dun, dun, dun. Hanging the lantern. So we go back to the Impala and it's nighttime and Sam's driving and Dean's on the phone and he's saying, yeah, Dad, all right, got it. And he hangs up and he says, pull off at the next exit. And Sam is really angry and he says, why? And Dean says, because Dad thinks we've got the vampire's trail. And Sam's super fucking pissed at this point and he says, how? And Dean says, I don't know. He didn't say. And Sam guns the engine. And Dean looks at him like he's lost his fucking mind, okay? And he turns to look at John's truck as Sam fucking whips past it, all right? Going, like his foot is on the floor on the gas. Like they are tearing past it. And we're all watching going, what the fuck are you doing, Sam? He slams on the brakes and does like one of those like handbrake turn situations. So basically the Impala swerves in front of John's truck and forces it to a stop. And Dean, meanwhile, in the passenger seat is like, oh, fuck, son. What he actually says is, oh, crap, here we go. Sam tears out of the car and he's like, Sam, he's trying to prevent this, but there's no preventing this. This is like a volcanic situation now. So Sam and John are like face to face looking fucking really fucking angry. Dean's following Sam going, Sam. John's like, what the hell was that? Sam says, we need to talk. And John puts his face so that he is squared, like his face is on top of Sam's face. And he goes, about what? And Sam says, about everything. Where we're going, Dad. What's the big deal with this gun? And Dean says, Sammy, come on. We can Q&A after we kill all the vampires. And John says, your brother's right. We don't have time for this. And Sam says, last time we saw you, you said it was too dangerous for us to be together. Now out of the blue, you need our help. And he starts yelling. He goes, now obviously something big is going on and we want to know what. Can I just say, again, this is Hanging the Lantern. So Hanging the Lantern is a writing tool that screenwriters will use when they need you to either ignore something that they've done that was a fuck up or pay attention to the way that they've changed their minds. So before, everything that we have seen has been like, oh, they can't be together. Oh, they can't be together. So Sam's screaming the question that we all need answered in this script. Otherwise, it makes no damn sense. That's Hanging the Lantern. Or if someone does something totally ridiculous and a character's like commenting either how it worked or that it is also ridiculous, that's Hanging the Lantern. Because it lets us as the audience either understand something wild or excuse it. So John says, get back in the car. And Sam goes, no. And they look like they're about to fist fight, you guys. And John says, yeah. And can I just say, Sam is weirdly hot to me in this sequence while he's screaming at John. Like, I feel like I don't know if I need more therapy or if that means that I've done enough therapy. I'm not sure what that's about. But yeah,
we've already established that violence are your thirst traps.
Violence is always my thirst trap. Which is so weird because I've ended up with the most chill man in the world ever, who is like literally never a violent person. It makes no sense. Anyway, so John says, I said, get back in the damn car. And Sam says, yeah. And I said, no. And Dean's just kind of in the middle. And he says, okay, you made point, tough guy. Look, we're all tired. We can talk about this later. Sammy, I mean it. Come on. And he's like, Dad, Dean. And Dean grabs Sam and pushes him back towards the car. And Sam goes, still staring at John. But like, I was like, listen, if Dean did not intervene, I feel like Sam was going to like throw some punches. Honestly, like Sam was
I reckon they would have had a fight, yeah.
Yeah, they would have had a fist fight. Because there's no way John is going to back down. He's a stubborn son of a bitch. And Sam's like, this guy has no respect for me.
And I feel like he was ready for it. And so Sam says, "This is why I left in the first place." And John goes, "What did you say?" And Sam swings around and he says, "You heard me." And John says, "Yeah, you left. Your brother and me, we needed you. And you walked away, Sam." And Dean goes, "Sam," like Dean is like, "Sam, do not, I repeat, do not get back in this argument." That's the tone. And John's yelling right in Sam's face, "You walked away." And Dean is now getting like, enough is enough. And he goes, "Stop it, both of you." And Sam says, "You're the one who said, 'Don't come back, Dad.' You closed the door, not me. You were just pissed off that you couldn't control me anymore." And Dean's like getting in the middle and pushing them apart because they're about to punch each other. And he says, "Listen, stop it, stop it, stop it. That's enough." And at this point, I felt so sorry for him. Like, I couldn't even see it as a thirst trap because I just felt so like emotionally torn up for him. It's so fucking sad. Because we know that what Dean wants more than anything is the three of them together hunting monsters. And here they are.
Yeah.
And instead of it being like what he imagined it would be like, it's just this old same like toxic behavior that they've had before.
Yeah.
So Dean pushes them apart, tells them to stop it. Sam and John are like glaring at each other over Dean's head because they're both kind of taller than him. That was a little bit funny to me. So Dean looks at John and says, "That means you too." And I was like, "You sexy motherfucker." So Sam gets in the Impala. John turns back and gets into his car. And I'm like, well, we know who the real badass is in this family. That's a thirst trap. And Dean stands in the middle of the road alone, looking from one to the other. And he just goes, "Terrific."
Yeah. This is where I was like, I understand where Sam was coming from, but it was a bit over the top to just confront him in the middle of the road, in the middle of a case.
Yeah. Like people are dying. Choose your timing. I know that it's supernatural and people are always kind of dying, but like when you're at the motel, you had time to sleep. So I feel like there would have been time to have a conversation. So just like in those lulls, you know what I'm saying? There's time to have a conversation, not when you're on the road to go hunt things that are clearly killing people at this very moment in time.
Yeah. And also the vampires could have seen them and like killed them right there and then when they were preoccupied with arguing.
And also, way to give away your position by like screaming at the top of your lungs in the middle of the road. Can I just say? So subtle, guys.
I did feel sorry for Dean in this bit as well, though, because he's just stuck in the middle.
Oh my god, Dean is having the worst day, just the worst day, and I just want to give him a hug.
So then we cut to the nest again, or the barn, where the nest of vampires is, and I've just written down, this poor girl has just seen her boyfriend get ripped to pieces by vampires, and now she has to watch two vampires get it on right in front of her. Get a room.
I was like, this is wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So Kate and Luther are basically having sex against the bar. She's tied up. She's trying not to look, but also I guess there's nothing else to look at in this situation.
Yeah, she can't really help it.
Right. And so they both turn around and Luther says, "You like to watch, huh?" "Me too." And I went,
Yeah.
I don't know if that was supposed to be sexy or creepy. It definitely landed super creepy to me.
Yeah.
I guess it's just kind of adding to the horror of the situation, isn't it? And then she's crying and saying, "Are you going to kill me?" And you feel so sorry for her. And then Kate says, "I'm going to take you so high, you're never going to come down." And Luther cuts into Kate's arm with his knife, and Kate sucks on it and then goes to the girl, kissing her and forcing blood into her mouth as Luther's watching. And Luther says, "Welcome home, baby." And it just gave me 1970s porn vibes in a really like uncomfortable way. Like I feel there's a line with vampire horror where you have the sexy and then you have the horrific. And there's movies and there's characters that do it really, really, really well. Like Fright Night. Colin Farrell playing an evil vampire is insanely hot. He is terrifying as Jerry. but you also really want to fuck him. Like, you know it's wrong. You know that he is the worst of the worst evil. You see him do terrible things. He says terrible things. He is so soulless. Colin Farrell even said that he asked to play it differently, like he asked to play that part differently, and the director said no. And he says to this day, it's the character that he's played that makes him the most uncomfortable. And we know he's played some phenomenal, like, bad guys. So that says a lot. But yeah, like, this scene, I feel like it treads that line between the sexual horror of vampires and just the horror, and it hits the really uncomfortable note.
They're like creepy rather than sexy.
They really, really are.
I made a note to ask you if you think Luther is hot, because I don't, but I probably would have thought he was hot when I watched it, if I'd watched it when it was out the first time, like back in my early 20s.
Yeah.
But not now.
I do think that he's hot, but I don't like that I think that he's hot. So it's like I'm emotionally mature enough now to recognize that that scene makes me really uncomfortable. But
yeah.
he is quite a sexy vampire. I would say that, like, he falls under hot villain because he's a hot villain. Like, he's definitely a bad guy. There's no question that he's evil, but he's also sexy. So I'm going to say that he's a hot villain.
Teenage me would have liked him, especially liked his hair. I think for me, if I had to choose any of the vampires, I feel like Bo is hotter than Luther, but I still don't really like any of them.
Okay, no, that's fair, that's valid. I was just so excited. I was writing down like that we finally got to a hot villain, so Laura will be satisfied. Because Laura's like, are any of them ever going to be sexy? And I'm like, yes, be patient. We finally get there. And she's like, not him. No. I will
when
say,
I do my rating later, I'll pretend I'm a teenager.
Okay, no, I do think that it is mostly my teenage self and like my she's never been to therapy self who's like, ooh, Luther's hot. Because he's so fucking problematic. Okay? He really, really, really is. And again, you know, Damon Salvatore, hot, problematic vampire.
Yeah, see, I watched Vampire Diaries when it was out, and I liked Damon, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Always Damon, never Stefan. I was never attracted to Stefan. And that's how we know that I really needed to do more therapy. And I did. I did do that.
So then we cut to the next morning. Sam and Dean and John are watching the barn as the vampires are moving around, and Dean notes that they really can go out in the sun. And John says it just gives them like a nasty sunburn but doesn't kill them.
Yeah.
And you can only kill them by beheading them. And then he says they are usually asleep during the day, but it doesn't mean that they won't wake up. And then they make a plan. And then this is the bit where they all go to their cars. They open up their like little armories in their boot or their trunk, and they all get their machetes out. And John's basically like, my machete's bigger than yours.
The thing was like, okay, here's how I see it. Okay, so they go to the Impala, and we know that the Impala is stacked for weapons. Okay, there's the secret bits in the trunk, and they fold out, and it looks really fucking cool. And so Dean's opening the trunk, and John's doing the same thing. He has a secret compartment that slides out from the back of the truck, and we don't see what's inside it yet. And Dean says, Dad, I've got an extra machete if you need one. And it's then Dean's holding up the extra machete that John pulls out this shiny, serrated, huge fucking, like, just enormous, like, immaculate, perfect killing machine of a machete. And he says, I think I'm okay, thanks. And Dean just goes, wow. And it's not just that, because the camera is also kind of pulled back. And if the boys have, like, their little trunk armory that we have thought was sick as fuck this entire show, John's truck armory looks like fucking Q from James Bond put it together. Like, there are pieces that slide out. Everything in there looks fucking flawless. Like, he has so much more than they do. It makes theirs look like the, like, kid version, like the joke shop version of what he has. And it is so funny and so fucking on point. It was my favorite scene, probably. I loved it so much.
Yeah, it's good. John's truck is really cool. I like his truck.
Yep, I love it.
So this is where John finally tells them about the legend of the Colt or the gun, after asking if they want to hear about it. And this is why I wrote, clearly they do want to know what they're risking their lives for, and this is why I get why Sam is annoyed. And I'd written about, I've done a leadership course, and one of the things that I learned is it's important to communicate the reasoning behind your decisions so you get buy-in from your team. If you just demand things from people without telling them why, you're going to get pushback. That's why Sam is pushing back.
Oh my god, it's so true. But the way
Joy's laughing at me for doing a leadership course.
I'm laughing at the juxtaposition between Supernatural and a fucking works leadership course.
It's true though. He needs to get buy-in from his team.
Actually, low-key dying. Oh my god. A little bit of a hit of an inhaler. Like I have just enough asthma left that if you make me laugh too hard, I'll die slightly. And that just almost killed me. I almost got KO'd off the earth. Oh, sweet baby Jesus.
Yeah, so at least he's now telling them so that they will understand why.
It's a valid point. It was just wrapped up in some really funny explanation. That I died. That killed me. Okay. So John tells him the story, and he says, "It's just a story, a legend, really. Well, I thought it was. Never really believed it until I read Daniel's letter." And then the scene cuts to a man making the gun, numbering bullets and carving a devil's trap onto the handle. And John, as the voiceover says, back in 1835, when Halley's Comet, and can I just say Vampire Diaries again, with the comet reference. Back in 1835, when Halley's Comet was overhead, the same night those men died at the Alamo, they say Samuel Colt made a gun, a special gun. He made it for a hunter, a man like us, only on horseback. Story goes, he made 13 bullets, and this hunter used the gun a half dozen times before he disappeared, the gun along with him, and somehow Daniel got his hands on it. And then we cut back to the present, and John says, they say this gun can kill anything. And Dean says, kill anything? Like supernatural anything? And Sam says, like the demon. Because Sam is the sharpest tool in the box. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've established that Dean can be a little bit of a himbo. But Sam switched on. And John says, yeah, the demon. Ever since I picked up its trail, I've been looking for a way to destroy that thing. Find the gun. We may have it.
My notes for this bit were, when John says, this gun could kill anything, I was like, isn't that true of all guns? But then I was like, oh, he means supernatural things. Okay. Yeah. Oh, and this is where I wrote my prediction. So I wrote, my prediction is that they will get the gun, and that's what the finale will be, them trying to shoot the demon and kill it.
So then we cut back to the vampire's nest, and a barn window swings inward, and John jumps through it and disappears. Sam follows, then Dean. They survey the room, and vamps are sleeping in hammocks. All is quiet. John looks into the stalls.
Sleepy little baby vampires.
Sleepy little baby vampires. Dreaming dreams of slaughter, probably. A fun fact, which is just a show Easter egg and not a real Easter egg at all, is that I've recently discovered that I'm genetically related to the House of Besserode, which is the House of Vlad the Impaler. So, little vampire cool. Easter egg for you. Okay, so John looks into the stall. Sam and Dean follow. As Dean passes a hammock, he accidentally kicks an open bottle of beer onto the ground. It clinks, but the vampire doesn't wake up. At the back of the barn, John finds Kate and Luther asleep in a bed in an alcove, and the gun is hanging in a holster just over them. In the meantime, we cut to Sam finding the woman from before tied up against the poles. She's either sleeping or she's unconscious. And Sam's whispering, Dean. John slowly makes his way down a few steps to the bed. Luther turns over in his sleep, and John's kind of hesitating, really trying to get the gun without waking up the vampires. Sam begins to untie the woman, and they hear a noise. Dean looks behind them and realizes that there's more people. And we see that locked up, like, metal cage situation. And there are loads of people tied up, sleeping, unconscious. So he grabs a metal hook to just start breaking the lock, as in, like, picking the lock, not just breaking it. And Sam looks up sharply as they look over to the hammocks, but there's no noise. So John gets even closer to the gun, and you're, like, holding your breath in anticipation because it's such a dangerous thing. So the woman who's tied up starts moving like she's waking up, and Sam's whispering, and he says, hey, shh, I'm here to help you. And then she, it turns out, was turned into a vampire because she does this vampire scream that is actually quite scary and weird. It's like a banshee fucking scream. And
Terrifying.
Sam is like, what the actual fuck? And he's, like, moving backwards as fast as he can. And Dean looks around and the vampires all wake up. And now we're like, oh shit. Because you have Sam and Dean totally vulnerable right over here next to this person that you thought that they were rescuing, who was really sympathetic. And you're like, oh gosh, I hope that they save her. And then plot twist, she's gonna eat your heart. So it's a really good jump scare. So Dean goes, Sam. And as we all know, that's hot always.
So this bit, I had assumed that they'd turned her into a vampire when she was being fed the blood. So when Sam was trying to rescue her, I was like, Sam, it's really cute that he's trying to rescue her, but I was like, don't do it. I think she's a vampire.
That was the most English flap I have ever heard. Flapping to British people is like, how do you explain flapping? It's like concern. It's like flipping out. Yeah, flipping out is the American version of that. But it's like a smaller, cuter version of flipping out. That's the best way. That's the best way to phrase it. That was amazing.
You were on edge that whole scene.
Yeah, no, you are on edge that whole scene. So in my mind, like, I couldn't remember what happened, and I think I went back to the headspace of when I first saw it. And when I first saw it, what I was thinking was that they were clearly going to turn her. But I didn't see, like, we didn't follow the traditional show lore of, like, she has to be drained to the point of death and then she drinks the blood. This one, all we saw was we see her being force-fed the blood, and it's like weird, kicky sex stuff. So you don't know 100% that that's what's happening, but you sort of suspect, but we don't see the transition happen. So in my mind, I was like, oh, they're going to save her. That's great. She's been through so much. And then she, like, screams the demon scream, and you go, oh shit, of course she's been turned. But it really got me because I wasn't thinking like that, because I hadn't seen all the steps that I'm used to seeing before someone turns into a vampire. So it was a good plot twist.
Yeah, it was still a jump scare, and the scream was just, like, really scary.
Yeah, I wonder what effects they used to create that, because it is truly, like, really scary. And it doesn't sound cheesy. It doesn't really sound like an effect, if you know what I mean. It just, in the moment, it just sounds really demonic and fucked up, and you just go, ugh. So John turns to look towards the noise, and Luther and Kate are waking up, and Luther rears up and throws him against the wall. John grabs a rock and hurls it at the blacked out window, which lets the daylight in, and Luther and Kate flinch away from the sunlight, and John screams, boys, run. So Sam and Dean start running, calling out to John as they do. The vampires are giving chase. It's all really hectic, and we lose track of them, and the camera angle is mostly just following Sam and Dean as they run out of the barn doors into the daylight, and then they run up to where the cars are before they turn to look back. And Dean's going, Dad, and there's nothing, and we're just like, oh shit. And, like, Dean is low-key panicking, and your heart goes out to sweet little baby angel Dean. So after a long pause, John comes running up the slope, and they start to run to get into their cars, and John says they won't follow. They'll wait till tonight. Once a vampire has your scent, it's for life. And that's another new piece of vampire lore, that, like, once they've smelled you,
and that's terrifying.
That is terrifying. Like, that is really good show lore, because that will fuck you up. Like, that's it. Once they have you, they have you. So Dean says, what the hell do we do now? And he says, you got to find the nearest funeral home. That's what. And then they look at him kind of confused, and then it cuts, and then we're in the motel room.
When John says about finding the nearest funeral home, I've written down, we don't know why to start with, but it becomes clear later. And I was really stupid the first time I watched this. So actually I'll save it for when Dean comes back with the blood. I'll tell you why I was stupid.
I was immediately like, they're going to pull a Lestat. They're going to pull a Claudia and Louis versus Lestat, and it's going to be great. And I was so excited. And I was like, this is a very nice Anne Rice reference, because I'm an Anne Rice fan. And so it was very Interview with a Vampire, and I was a big fan.
Yeah, I haven't watched that for ages, so I had forgotten that.
Oh, I watch that movie all the time. Like literally every year I watch that movie. So they're inside the motel room, and Sam's pacing and John's sitting at the table, and Sam says, it shouldn't be taking this long. I should go help. And John says, Dean's got it. And Sam is kind of like, fuck you, dude. Like, he doesn't say anything, but he's just annoyed and worried. And John says, Sammy? And Sam says, yeah. And John says, I don't think I ever told you this, but the day you were born, you know what I did? And Sam says, no. And John says, I put $100 into a savings account for you. I did the same thing for your brother. It was a college fund. And every month I'd put it in another $100 until, anyway, my point is, Sam, this is never the life that I wanted for you. And Sam says, then why'd you get so mad when I left? And John says, you got to understand something. After your mother passed, all I saw was evil everywhere. And all I cared about was keeping you boys alive. I wanted you prepared, ready. Except somewhere along the line, I stopped being your father, and I became your drill sergeant. So when you said that you wanted to go away to school, all I could think about, my only thought was that you were going to be alone, vulnerable. Sammy, it never occurred to me what you wanted. I just couldn't accept the fact that you and me were just different.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really important. And it was also another kind of like hanging the lantern moment, because it's like, why is John suddenly behaving the way that he's behaving? So that heart to heart really explains to us why he is the way that he is, and why he can seem sort of contradictory.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really, really good. And it's the fact that he says that it was a college fund, because their big fight was about Sam wanting to go away to college. And so it's a really good olive branch.
Yeah, I'm happy that he finally has like explained to Sam about that.
Yeah. It's at this point that I start to like him again, because before I just wanted to punch him in the dick because he was mean to Dean. Nobody should be mean to Dean. It's against the law. So Sam kind of laughs, and John says, what? And Sam says that they're not really different, because the thing that happened to Mom and Jess makes them like basically exactly the same person. And John's like, oh, I guess you're right.
Good point.
Yeah. And then Sam goes, hey, Dad, whatever happened to that college fund? And John says, I spent it on ammo. And they just look at each other, and then they both crack up. And then Dean comes in, and he says, woo, man, that's some heavy security to protect a bunch of dead guys. And John goes, did you get it? And Dean kind of fumbles in his pocket, and then he pulls out a paper bag. And then from the paper bag, he pulls out a bottle full of dead people blood. And then he hands it to John.
This is where I was stupid. So I'm keeping this in because people need to know how stupid I was. My initial notes were, what did Dean bring back from the funeral home? Was it something to cover their scent? Then when John says, you know what to do, I was like, do we? And then later, when they're shooting them with the arrows and they say the arrows were covered in dead man's blood, I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I could have probably guessed that from the name of the episode.
Dead man's blood. What's
so I
that
felt very
liquid?
silly. I felt really stupid.
Oh, that's amazing. We put the horror in horror. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, my last truly stupid thing that I said on the podcast was, I said it puts the horror in horror, and then I was like, wait, that was so dumb. And Laura was like,
that's now become our show motto.
Yeah, she was like, that's making it into the episode. I'm not cutting that out. And then proceeds to laugh at me until she can't breathe. So, yeah, that was...
And made an Instagram post about it.
So, you know, that's how we celebrate these things. So I expect there to be an Instagram post about you being like, even though the show title is Dead Man's Blood, and Dean comes back with a jar full of red liquid. What was that? What could it be?
I literally didn't get it until they shot them with the arrows and said it out loud. And said it had dead man's blood on it.
That's amazing. Okay, so we cut to the road at night, and Dean is looking over the open hood of the car because they're making it look like the Impala's broken down on the road, and he's bait, and like he's hot bait. So obviously she falls for it, and she walks up and she goes, "Car trouble," and we turn around and we see it's Kate. And Kate says, "Let me give you a lift. I'll take you back to my place." And Dean says, "Nah, I'll pass. I usually draw the line at necrophilia." And Kate goes, "Ooh." And then she backhands him. Like, he's like, "I usually draw the line at necrophilia." The way he delivers that line is such good banter. And then she smacks him. And this is the most Buffy scene that I have ever seen in this show, because this is such Buffy banter. Like, this is so something she would say to a vampire and then get smacked around the cemetery. Like, I was thriving. What were you going to say?
Yeah, that would. Well, I just wrote, usually, Dean, usually. Do you usually draw the line? Usually draw the line at necrophilia.
God. I thought that I knew what my favorite quote of the episode was going to be, but now I've changed my mind.
But you're right, it is like Buffy banter. That was good.
Oh my god. Okay, so she backhands him, and then another vampire comes up, and she grabs his face and lifts him into the air, and Dean grabs her wrist and says, "I don't usually get this friendly until the second date, but..." And I'm just like, the whole flirting, fighting banter is really, I love it. I'm thriving. And Kate's like, "You know, we could have some fun. I always like to make new friends." And she lowers him down to her level and kisses him, holding his face against her face. And the other vamp is smiling and watching. And Dean goes, after he pulls away, he's like, "Oof, sorry, I don't usually stay with a chick that long. Definitely not eternity."
That was more Buffy banter.
It's Buffy banter all the way. And then suddenly an arrow pierces through the other vampire. And then a second later, the same thing happens to Kate. Yeah. We just see our point of view. It's just, and then it's like coming through her chest. And it's so sick. I love it. And she looks down at the point sticking out of her, and she just goes, "Damn it," which is, again, fucking Buffy. Like, that is so fucking Buffy. And John and Sam emerge from the trees carrying crossbows. And Kate says it barely even stings because, you know, she's been shot, but not. My brain just went, "Shot through the heart, but you're too late." Because naturally. Because I was about to say "shot through the heart." So Bon Jovi started playing in my head immediately because I was born in the 80s. She's like, "It barely even stings." Buffy banter. And John says, "Give it time, sweetheart. That arrow is soaked in dead man's blood. It's like poison to you, isn't it?" And she looks shook. And then she basically passes out because she had to be told that it was dead man's blood in order for it to work, apparently. The timing of that kind of made me like, it is badass, don't get me wrong, but the timing did make me giggle a little bit. So John says, "Load her up." And then he gestures to the other vampire and he says, "I'll take care of this one." And then he walks up with his machete and just cuts this guy's head off. And it's so badass. And we just see blood spraying everywhere. Very Addams Family. And I was like, that was really good. That was good gore. I appreciate you. Good gore.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. I'd my notes for this section I'd written, she punches him and then lifts him up off the floor by his jaw. And then she full on snogs him. Very mixed signals.
Yeah. It's the jawline. It's the Dean Winchester jawline. Who could resist that? No one.
And then when she is told that it's dead man's blood, that's when I was like, ah. that was my watching experience.
Oh, that's the best. That's actually the best. I'm never gonna get over that. Okay. So nighttime, there's a campfire burning. John hands Dean a bag, and they move from the Apollo's trunk back to the fire where Sam is patrolling with a machete. And John says, toss this on the fire. Saffron, skunk's cabbage, and trillium. It'll block our scent and hers until we're ready. So obviously, your friendly neighborhood witch, was like, but would this really work? And I decided to look it up. And fun fact, this actually would work. Like, if we were living in this world from a magical perspective, this would definitely work. So saffron is super sacred. And its powers are protection and warding. And skunk's cabbage actually, fun fact, creates its own heat, a little bit like the sun. So that's a nice piece of magic. It also releases the same exact chemical as a rotting corpse, which makes me think of the dead man's blood. And from a kind of like spiritual context, like a sympathetic magic context, that would work very well. But there's also something else that I found that says, according to Iroquois lore, it says that it not only cures dog bites, but causes the teeth of the dog that bit you to fall out. Which for vampires would be fucking perfect. And then trillium, which he mentions, is all about making boundaries around yourself and specifically your family and protecting them by repelling negative forces or evil. So this combination that he has them making magically checks out. And it is witch approved. I approve this message.
Yeah, so the writers definitely did their research on that then.
They fully did. Yeah, it's great. It's so cool. So then John says, toss this on the fire, saffron, skunk's cabbage, all that stuff. They toss it on the fire, and Dean goes, oh my God, this stuff stinks. And we know that's because of the skunk cabbage. And fun fact, it grows all over Florida, and it does smell really bad. Like, it smells like a skunk and a fox and dead stuff. It's just kind of all mashed together. So John says that's the idea. Dust your clothes with the ashes and you stand a chance of not being detected. And Sam says, are you sure they'll come after her? And John says, yeah, vampires mate for life, which is another new piece of vampire lore, which I love. She means more to the leader than the gun. But the blood sickness is going to wear off soon, so you don't have a lot of time. And Sam says, half hour ought to do it. And John says, and then I want you out of the area as fast as you can. And Sam says, but? And Dean says, well, Dad, you can't take care of them all yourself. And John says, I have her and the colt. And Sam says, but after, we're going to meet up, right? Use the gun together, right? And there's this really long pause. And then he says, you're leaving again, aren't you? You still want to go after the demon alone. You know, I don't get you. You can't treat us like this. And they're really like right back where they were before. And John says, like what? And Sam says, like children. And John says, you are my children. I'm trying to keep you safe. And Dean says, Dad, all due respect, but that's a bunch of crap. And so Sam and John both look at Dean like they are fucking shocked because Dean just
like, what?
John. They're just like, pigs are flying. The world has shifted on its axis. Hell just fucking froze over. What the fuck just happened? And John says, excuse me? And Dean says, you know, what Sammy and I have been hunting. Hell, you sent us on a few trips yourself. You can't be that worried about keeping us safe. John says, it's not the same thing, Dean. Dean says, then what is it? Why do you want us out of the big fight? And John says, this demon, it's a bad son of a bitch. I can't make the same moves if I'm worried about keeping you alive. And Dean says, you mean you can't be as reckless? And John says, look, I don't expect to make it out of this fight in one piece. Your mother's death, it almost killed me. I cannot watch my children die too. I won't. And Dean says, what happens if you die, Dad? What happens if you die and we could have done something about it? You know, I've been thinking, I think maybe Sammy's right about this one. We should do this together. And Sam's nodding. And Sam's like, we are finally on the same fucking page. And Dean says, we're stronger as a family, Dad. We just are. You know it. So John says, we're running out of time. You do your job and you get out of the area. That's an order. And Dean looks down and he's all emotional and Sam's clenching his jaw. And that's sexy because that's a good jawline. And we know I have a weakness for good jawlines and jaw clenching. So that's hot. But it is a very emotional scene.
Yeah, when Dean stands up to John, I was just like, fist bump, yeah, go Dean. And also, I have to just point out, when John said, this demon is a bad son of a bitch, I was just like, well, duh.
Like, obviously. Thank you for stating the obvious.
Yeah, no, I'm with the boys here. he can't just use them when he needs them, when he wants them, and then tell them to go away again. But I get it. I get that he's trying to protect them, but surely they're better as a team rather than just one of them on their own.
I think that's his weakness in this instance, because I feel like logically he knows that that's true, but he just doesn't want to risk them. Like, this is the one thing that John Winchester is actually scared of. I think outside of this, he's the most fearless hunter ever, and he's such a badass, and he's amazing. But like, this demon is the only thing on the earth that John Winchester is really, truly frightened of. And he knows that he could not live with himself if anything happened to either of them. So from his point of view, his job as their dad is to keep them safe and to keep them out of that fight. So like, he thinks he's made them big enough and strong enough and know enough that they can tackle most of the monsters that he knows are out there going bump in the night. And that's his way of keeping them safe. So even though he's sending them into danger, in his mind, he's training them and making them strong and keeping them safe and alive. By giving them these skill sets that will let them survive in the real world that they live in. But he doesn't want them to go after the most dangerous things. He wants to do that himself to protect them as their father. And I understand it. Is he wrong? Yes. But do I understand his motivations? Also, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I do get it, but I'm with Sam and Dean on this one.
Yeah, they're right. They're totally right. It's just that John is actually a little bit sympathetic finally. At last.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the next scene, there's a vamp pulling up to where Luther and the others are waiting, and he's heading towards them. And they've clearly been like looking for Kate. And he says, "Is there any sign of those three?" And the vampire says, "No, there's something else." And Luther says, "What?" And he says, "They cut off Frank's head." And Luther says, and Kate?" And the vampire says, "I don't know. She wasn't here. What are we going to do?" And they hear a car. And the vampire says, "It's just a truck up on the highway." And Luther's whispering, and he says, "Kate, she's in that truck." So we know that he has some kind of link. Yeah, he can sense her. And they're kind of like, I like the fact that vampires were like swans, where they mate for life. And they have
like penguins.
And yeah. Amazing. So we cut to John's truck, and Kate is in the back, but she's starting to regain consciousness. And then after a moment, we see headlights shining in the rearview mirror, and two cars are coming up really fast on John's truck from behind. And then we cut to the vampire nest. It was really scary. You just go, "Oh, fuck."
Oh, no, I have a note before we move on, because the lighting, the light from the cars shining on the rearview mirror onto John's face was hot.
Yeah, that was really good film noir. Like, that was such a flawless piece of film noir lighting, where you have the hero and he just has like the light over only his eyes,
over his eyes.
Really, really sexy and heroic.
It was like when we first saw him in Shadow as well.
Yeah, when he turns and the light hits him perfectly. Yeah. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Jeffrey Dean Morganing. Yeah. So we cut to the vamp nest, and a vampire is swigging from a bottle, and he looks up, and then he moves to stand in front of the barn doors, kind of thinks about something for a minute, and then shrugs, and he takes another swig. So he obviously thought that there was something going on, and then he goes, "Nah, I must have imagined it." And then boom, there's Dean. And Dean goes, "Boom." Which, again, very Buffy of him. Okay. And then he swings the machete and decapitates this guy. And then he makes his way to the locked cage where the people are. And he says, "I told you I'd come back." And he starts breaking the hinges in. Thirst trap.
Yeah.
That was hot.
Yeah. While this is happening, John is still driving with the headlights of the vampires following him behind him. And then they just disappear. Like, the lights just go. And then they reappear in front of him. And this is where they have glowing eyes, like cat's eyes. Like, all of them. And yeah, this is the first time I noticed it on the first watch through, because it's not as noticeable earlier in the episode.
So John ends up having to stop because they block the road ahead of him. And there's Luther and three other vampires in two cars.
And Luther says, "Get out. Who are you?" And John says, "The name's Winchester." And I thought that was badass. And Luther says, "Where are your friends?" And John says, "Cleaning out your nest." And Luther gives him this kind of like anguished smile. And he says, "Where's Kate?" And John turns back to the truck and says, "Come here, sweetheart." And he pulls her out. So he has like, he's trussed her up where there's this long rope from her wrist going back out to where he is. And he's kind of pulling her around. And then he grabs her and he holds up this really big knife to her neck. And Luther says, "Kate, are you all right?" And she says, "Dead man's blood." And Luther goes, "You son of a bitch." And John says, "I want the Colt, Elkins gun, trade." And Luther says, "Is that what this is all about? I mean, you can't shoot us all, right? We'd kill you." And John says, "Oh, I don't need it for you. I'm saving it for something else." And it's so badass, this whole scene, because he's just like, Luther thinks that he's the biggest, baddest thing on the planet. And John's just like, "You are small fish to me." And that's really cool. John says, "Put the Colt down or she goes first." And Luther says, "All right, just don't hurt her." And this is where I like him. And that's why he's a hot villain. So he puts the Colt on the ground and John says, "Back up further." And John drags Kate forward and leans down with her to pick up the gun. But Kate has been secretly untying herself this whole time. So when he does this maneuver to get the gun, she gets free. Luther says to John, "It's a nice move and you almost made it." And John's like, "What?" And Kate swings around and she knocks John back against the truck. And I mean, like, he flies. He drops the gun. Luther comes up and then he bitch slaps John against the open car door, which breaks the glass. And then he ends up unconscious on the ground. And I was just like, oh, shit. Yeah. Not good. So then suddenly an arrow pierces through one of the vampires and Sam and Dean run out of the trees, right? And Dean pauses to line up and shoot another vampire with his crossbow. Sam moves towards Luther, who backhands him, but Dean grabs a machete and turns to help. Then Luther has his arm around Sam's throat and he says, "Don't, I'll break his neck, put the blade down." And for a minute, Dean doesn't do anything. And he's considering whether or not he can get to him first. But Luther then really starts choking Sam hard, and we think he's going to crush his neck totally. So Dean drops the machete, and Luther says, "You people, why can't you just leave us alone? We have as much right to live as you do." And then John from behind him says, "I don't think so." And Luther turns around, and John raises the Colt and shoots him dead between the eyes. And Luther drops Sam, who kind of stumbles away, trying to gasp for air. And Dean is pulling Sam behind him to protect Sam, which is hot. And a sigil appears where the bullet hit Luther. He stumbles. There's this boom, flash of light. And then it's like we see like an X-ray. It's like it goes through him. You can see his bones and everything
that was cool.
flashing. Yeah. It's such cool, like it's like clearly witchcraft. Like it's obviously magic and it's really cool. And then he falls to his knees and Kate goes, "Luther!" And there's another flash of light, and then Luther drops to the ground and he's fucking stone dead. So Kate starts towards John, but one of the other vampires grabs her and they just flee because John is the biggest bad thing now in their little world. And he smiles in satisfaction. And that's where they cut that particular scene. And it's just so hardcore. I loved it.
Yeah. I wrote, "Whoa, that was a cool effect" when he shoots him through the head. But I did have a question, and I was like, why did he waste one of the magic bullets though? He could have just like cut his head off or shot him with a normal gun. Or shot him with the dead man's blood on an arrow. Because he's now wasted, wasn't there only 13 bullets or something, and there's only 6 left or something like that. So he's just wasted one.
I think I did the math, and I think that they have about 7 left. And John is a scientist in his own way. He wanted to test the gun. He's heard, right, this whole time that it has this legend attached to it, but no one's seen it in action and actually documented it in the last 100 years. He had to know if it would work, so he tests it on Luther
before he goes to the demon.
And then that also saves them from having to get into another fight with however many vampires. Because like, could they take them? Yes. but could they equally get hurt or one of them maybe get killed? Probably not, but there's always that tiny possibility. So I think John just saw this as a strategic moment to test the gun and protect his sons.
Yeah, that makes sense, because he does need to test it before he goes after the demon, because if it doesn't work, then they're going to be in danger. Also, there was a John thirst trap when he shoots the gun, and then he just looks completely like nonplussed, like he's just killed this vampire in an epic way, and he's just like,
No, it is so hot. That is a John thirst trap. It's so cool. Like it establishes him as like, if Sam and Dean are these badasses that we've been following for in the show lore now a year, then John is like above that. John is actually the daddy.
Yeah.
Okay. Like he is the biggest badass in this world. And that scene does a really good job of setting him up, because we have to believe when we're going to go into a boss fight, every season finale is going to always have a boss fight. We have to establish the lore of John Winchester before we do that. And this did it in such a fucking cool way. It's epic. I love it.
Yeah, because Sam and Dean are like really shocked. They're like, what? And John's just like, that was cool.
He's just like, it did what I wanted it to do. Yeah, no, it is really cool. He's cool as a fucking cucumber, and it makes that scene so much more badass. It's amazing. I love it.
Oh, actually, in my note, I've written, John smiles. I think he's just thinking, cool, this gun is totally going to kill that demon.
I feel like there should be a hair flip at the end of that. So they're back in the motel room, and John says, so boys, and they turn to face him, and Sam says, yes, sir. And John says, you ignored a direct order back there. And Sam says, yes, sir. And Dean says, yeah, but we saved your ass. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Because we're
and
finally...
Sam's face. Sam's face is a picture.
A fucking picture. Sam's face in that moment is everything. If we can find a picture of Sam making that face, I feel like that needs to go on the Thursday post, because it's amazing. I love it so much. So Sam looks at Dean sideways, and John looks at Dean, and Dean swallows, and then John, it's this really tense moment, and then John just goes, you're right. And Dean goes, I am. I laughed out loud. And John goes, it scares the hell out of me. You two are all I've got, but I guess we're stronger as a family, so we go after this damn thing together. And then the theme music starts playing, and this is a really cool moment. And then Sam and Dean in unison go, yes, sir. And that's also really cool, because as we know, we love it when they do things in unison. And then end of episode.
Yeah, and I write my final note is, this is a 3-way thirst trap. I can almost not cope with the level of hotness from all 3 of them being so brooding at the same time.
Yeah, I'll allow it. That was pretty much an ultimate.
They're all just kind of looking at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, good episode.
It was a really good episode.
It has left me excited about the finale, because I feel like there's 2 episodes left, but I feel like they're kind of going to be one story, like one big long episode, but in 2 episodes. Does that make sense? That's not explained very well.
No,
they're both going to be about the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good call. So we've already kind of done villain hot or not, haven't we?
Yeah, I put better than others, I guess.
She's lukewarm. I'm going to give it to Luther. I think he's a hot villain. I don't think he's the hottest of all the hot villains, but I think he's a hot villain, so I'll allow it. He's a hot villain.
Teenage me would have thought he was hot.
Yeah,
so I'll give him that.
Same.
Episode scare rating.
I give it like a 7.
Yeah, because it wasn't like super scary. It was like cool.
Yeah.
But there were some moments.
There were moments for sure. What's your biggest thirst trap moment? Have you been able to pick? There's a few.
That's the ending. The ending with all 3 of them.
That's fair. Like, that's really fair. I had written down Dean being in the middle and breaking up the fight between John and Sam, but the ending is probably the stronger choice, not gonna lie.
Favorite quote?
It's I usually draw the line at necrophilia.
Usually. I have something written down, but I think there was a funnier one earlier on. I'm just scrolling through my notes. Hang on a second. Bear with me. Oh, the salt bit. Where's that? I think the salt bit is my favourite. So Dean saying, you mean like protection against demon salt or oops, I spilled the popcorn salt? That's
a really good line. And the hotel, where are we rating? Well, you didn't even know it was like a motel.
No, I didn't even know it was. I was like, is this a motel or are they at Elkins' house?
It's kind of a nothing motel, to be honest, because we don't even really see it. It's just sort of darkly lit, and they're in it for like 30 seconds. So I don't even know if we can really rate it, because I feel like we don't really see it. Like, there's not like an obvious theme to it. It's just a place with beds.
No. Yeah, there wasn't really we didn't have themes like I've grown accustomed to.
Lauren, her themed rooms. Okay. So
MVP. I think it's Dean for standing up to his dad.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. Although there's a part of me that's tempted to say that it's John Winchester shooting Luther and testing the gun out.
Oh, actually,
that's really cool.
Yeah, I suppose it's John, isn't it?
It's John. Yeah. Alrighty. Okay. Well, shall we end it there and say goodbye to these nice people until next week?
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. We would be very grateful. And if you know someone who would enjoy it, please share.
You can find us on Instagram at the Witches of Letters podcast, or you can email us at thewitchesofletters@gmail.com.
Until next time, stay safe out there, have each other's backs, and always keep fighting.